Hi there, welcome to Mark Killian's channel. It's me, Mark Killian, and we are going to talk today about musical bows. I have three of them here. We're going to talk about their origins, their history, and their contemporary use in music making today. So let's get started. Okay, now pretty much every single instrument I've ever covered on this channel up to now has a predecessor. It has another instrument from which it came or drew its inspiration. You can trace an osmosis through various events where instruments morphed into other instruments. People saw an instrument and thought, oh, that's very nice. I want to make it my own. Let me put my culture on that instrument. And off we go, we have another instrument. Every instrument that exists today, I don't care what it is, has that as its legacy. However, this instrument is different. The musical bow has no predecessor. We can't go back and look at something that the musical bow might have come from. This is the prototype stringed instrument. And I'm talking about the musical bow in general. We're going to get into the different ones. But there is no other instrument that came before this. The only thing that is like this, that this might have come from, is this. The bow and arrow. Now, it's the chicken and the egg syndrome, right? What happened first? Did they have the bow and arrow to use to hunt? And then one day sitting under a tree, someone said, well, that sounds nice. Let me try something with that. Or did they make this as an instrument? And one day someone said, oh, what if I do that? Look, it can be a weapon. Knowing human beings, probably I would say the former is true. So there are three different types of bows. We have the bow that is resonated by a mouth, like this one. We have a bow that is resonated by a calabash or some kind of gourd, like the three that I have that I'm going to show you today. And then we also have a bow that is resonated by a hole in the ground. That one is not very popular because you can't pick a hole in the ground up and carry it with you. Not portable, not practical. Now let's go back to this instrument. This is the mouth bow of the San people, or the Bushmen, the Kalahari of South and Southern Africa. This is widely regarded by historians, anthropologists, musicologists, ethnomusicologists to be the prototype string instrument. Now, we don't have archaeological evidence for this. These things don't last, and we might be talking tens of thousands of years, maybe even more. So there is nothing for us to prove this by. But just based on the sort of understanding that we have of anthropology, where did the first human beings come from? And how did migration spread human beings all over the world, in what kind of ways, and how, and to where, and all this stuff. And of course, whatever musical instruments they may have had would have gone with them, and would have migrated and developed, as did their cultures, as did their languages, as did their religion and belief systems, social systems, all this stuff. But of course, this bow still exists today. The San people still play this bow. Here's a little bit of how that actually sounds. And, we're going to be talking a lot about osmosis in this episode, but that pretty much exactly that bow, that structure, now exists still today in other cultures. For example, in the Xhosa culture of Southern Africa, that's the culture where Nelson Mandela comes from, they have something called umrube. This is what that looks like. It's essentially the same thing. The difference is the umrube is bowed by the stick, whereas the San strike the string with the stick. Now, of course, going back hundreds, thousands of years, these things were probably gut instruments to begin with, and later as steel became available, they're pretty much all steel now, as is the umrube, which I just showed you. Here is another one called the mongongo from Gabon in Western Central Africa, struck with a stick, but very similar. And then get this, there is something called the Appalachian mouth bow. I shit you not. Yeah, the Appalachian mountain range in the eastern United States. I mean, it's essentially the same thing. Resonated by the mouth. In this case, they pluck it either with a finger or with a plectrum, but it's essentially the same instrument. I love osmosis. Let's move on to the next and most ubiquitous of all the bows, the gourd resonated bow. Now this is basically an uhadi, which is also a Xhosa instrument from the eastern Cape, part of the Cape. So it's a bow, as you can see, and it has a wire string. Now traditionally the string is just woven around the ends, and then when you want to tune it, you just put one side in the ground and push it down and then try and wrap the string around, the wire around. Not practical. So what I've done is I took a guitar tuning peg and put it in there. And so now I can tune this thing, to play with a track or to play with other people. It's a cool thing. Then the gourd itself, let me show you, is, this is just a pumpkin shell that's been dried out, a calabash. And then this thing is connected. You can see there, I've got some string around there. Actually, I'm using nylon, but traditionally they're either using some kind of fiber or steel. And then it connects in there. I'm just using a simple screw, but sometimes it's actually bolted into the wood. It also has the isolator. That can be any kind of fabric or cloth or even leather. I just used an old piece of rag and tied it together. That basically just isolates the bow from the stick so that you get a slightly more focused resonance. And then the way you play this is you put it on your breast. Now traditionally it is played by a woman, but that is changing. And what happens is using the gourd, and it's preferable to have not to be wearing clothes for this, but I don't want to subject you to that. So basically you're opening and closing this around your breast. Let me show you. Now also the uhadi is not braced. The string goes from one end to the other. There is nothing in the middle touching that string. I'll show you in a minute, that will be a little more clear. So let me show you the uhadi. The way it's played is you're getting two notes out of the sky. So hitting the string and then pinching. Look at that, I'm pinching it there with my two fingers. Let me show you with the mic. Now, you can move it away from your breast like that, but it's actually easier to do a rocking movement, which is more or less traditionally how it's played. Now, a very close cousin to this guy is something called the ugubu, which is from the Zulu people of southeastern part of South Africa, KwaZulu-Natal. This is what that looks like. I mean, it's essentially the same thing. Looks very similar. It's unbraced, very similar sound, not as ubiquitous as this one. Okay, now we move on to the braced bows. All right, so let me show you what that means. I have a little wire here that comes out of the calabash and goes around the main string, effectively dividing it into two parts, which means you get two different pitches that you can adjust, right? So here we go. One pitch, another pitch. Now, by the way, this is called a makwiyana. It is a Zulu bow, again from KwaZulu-Natal, from the Zulu people. But very similar instruments exist in other parts of Africa. We'll take a look. Now, this one gives you the ability actually to play three notes. So what happens here is we've got the two notes. Remember with the uhadi, we were pinching the string. In this case, we're going to use the knuckle. Let me show you here. So what that means is you get three different notes out of this instrument. So yeah, three notes. Wow, wonderful thing. You can also adjust, obviously, however you want this division to be, to whatever note you want. You can make this up there if you like. Which is now taking that a minor third up instead of just a tone. Or you can have it a minor tone, or just a half step. Now the makoyana, this one I have anyway, is made of bamboo. Usually it's a stick, but in this case it's bamboo. Again, it's just a gourd. What's cool, what I've done with this one, this bamboo is probably not going to accept tuner very easily. It's probably going to break the bamboo. So what I've done is built this little device in here that I can very crudely screw out that will adjust the tuning of it a little bit. Not quite like if I had a guitar peg in there. Now, a very close cousin of this guy is a chitende from Mozambique. And that will get a little more important in a second. Also, a kalumba from Zambia is a very similar instrument to this. Now, I just mentioned the chitende from Mozambique, East Africa. There are two other instruments I want to mention. And the three of these instruments together are going to tell us a nice little story. In the country of Angola, there are two instruments that are very much tied into the story I'm just about to tell you. One is called the mbulumbumba from the southern part of Angola, and the other one is called the ungu, which is from sort of the northern part of Angola. Now, the mbulumbumbu is a little different in that it's one of the only bows that is played sideways. It's obviously a lot smaller because it needs to be easier to handle played sideways, but the ungu is more like any of these bows. In fact, it's a little closer maybe to the uhadi. Now I want you to take a look at an instrument that I can guarantee you've all heard at some point in your life. This is from Brazil, and it's called the berimbau. It is massively, massively popular in Brazil. It is an integral part of the whole capoeira movement tradition in Brazil. And so the berimbau has been there for hundreds of years. But look again, I mean, this is exactly almost the same instrument. And so we get to, how the hell did all this happen? Well, in the beginning of the 1500s, the Portuguese were colonizing parts of Africa. Angola was one, Mozambique was the other. And the Portuguese started trading slaves very early on. And a lot of the slaves that were taken from the Portuguese colonies of Angola, and to a lesser extent Mozambique, ended up in Brazil. There were a huge amount of slaves that were transported during the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s from these countries primarily to Brazil. We always think of the United States as Grand Central for slavery, but actually the amount of slaves that were transported to the South American countries was a lot larger than what was transported to the North American countries. And as slaves would have tended to do where possible, they would have kept their musical traditions alive in whatever way they were able to. Luckily, with an instrument like this, it's not too hard to fashion something like this in a new land. You just need a stick and a piece of wire and a dried pumpkin and you're good to go. Now here is my third instrument. Now this is actually a berimbau. This is built here in the United States by a guy called Greg Bayer and Arco Musical, his operation. A beautifully built bow with an amazing calabash. And just look at this tuning peg. Just beautifully built in there. It's a fine instrument indeed. I've changed it a bit. The berimbau players are going to tend to have the calabash lower, much lower. And typically berimbau is played using the stomach as the resonator, not the breast. The other important difference is that berimbau plays to stop, and they stop it more or less in the same place as an uhadi player does, but they're going to use a coin to do that. Whereas an uhadi, as I showed you, is you're pinching it. In Angola with the ungu, they use a bottleneck. So I've made this a little more like an uhadi because I've made it higher. There's no brace, and because obviously usually a berimbau is braced very low, and the brace in the berimbau, unlike the makoyana which I showed you, is so low that it doesn't divide the string into two parts. Well, it does. It's just that the lower part is going to be so high that it's not really a note like where the makoyana is only a tone apart. This is going to be more like, an octave and a half apart. It's used really for percussive things, but it's not really a separate note, if you know what I mean. So you're going to get really two notes in essence from a berimbau, whereas makoyana you're going to get three. And the same with your uhadi, you're going to get two. So I've set this up more like a uhadi. Let's take a listen. That's a beautiful sound. This is a maniac of an instrument. Greg Bayer actually is in the process of making a double-stringed berimbau, which is pretty incredible. I want to get my hands on that one. Let me just demonstrate if I tune this down a bit. And now we'll play it like that. So it's a fine idea to have a tuning peg on a berimbau or on any of these bows. Now, there are variations on musical bows from all over the world. Of course, we understand that they probably all originated from Africa, but they have traveled everywhere. Starting off in Africa, something called the umuduri from Rwanda and Burundi. This instrument has actually 2 gourds and sometimes 2 strings. So what Greg is making there is probably not the first time it's ever been done. There's something called the Kse Diev, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Cambodia. There's an ukeke in Hawaii. There's a ku of the Maori people in New Zealand. There's a chapareke from the Tarahumara people in the northern part of Mexico. An interesting instrument because it has sometimes 3 strings and tuning pegs. There's a mulunga from the Sidi people of India. And did I mention a bow from the Appalachian Mountains? I shit you not. Now, there are some people you need to check out. If you want to explore this any further, when it comes to the berimbau, there's no one like Nana Vasconcelos. I mean, this guy, he unfortunately has passed away now, but he is done with the bow instrument, just in terms of virtuosic playing, more than I think anyone else has done on any bow instrument ever. I mean, his playing is insane. In South Africa is a lady called Madosini, who's a great uhadi player. There's also a Bagivile Ngema, who is a Makweyani player. And then there is Mantombi Matotiana, who is an Umhube player. And then Dizu Plakis, who is, he's got a lot of videos out. Go and check him out. I mean, this guy can play anything, really. And he's amazing. He makes his own stuff. Absolutely amazing musician. And then there's a fun group called, I spoke about the Umuduri instrument from Burundi. Check out the Umuduri Boys. Sort of contemporary, sort of mixing a lot of hip hop and stuff, with the 3 of them playing their umuduri bows. It's super cool. And then I want to thank Greg Bayer and Arco Musical, his organization. He's been a great help to me researching this video, and he's also a great help to the whole world. Just his extensive knowledge of this instrument. They are a great resource, and as I say, they also make fine instruments like the one I just bought and showed you. And then Greg works very closely with a guy called Sazi Dlamini, who I actually went to university with, and he edited a book called Musical Bows of Southern Africa. This is an academic work. It is incredibly extensive, and if you want to dive deep into this stuff, there's no better place to go than look at that book. So I'm hoping to do an artist profile one day on some amazing bow player or something, so look out for that. So I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it and researching for it. This has been something that I was introduced to in my very first year of university in Durban, and I've always been fascinated ever since about this instrument. So please, please, please like and subscribe. Please hit that bell button. It helps me grow my channel so I can make more videos like this for you folks. So I'll catch you on the next one. Go get your bow on.